Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody whose partner is on a different timeline. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not professionals. We are not trained in this. So please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love. All right. Today's letter is from In Love Just Faster, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing to us from Relationship Escalator Hell. I wish it was Relationship Escalator to Hell. I'm on the highway to hell. Anyway. Hi, Spencer, Sierra, and Sam. Oh, all out of order there.
It was great.
It.
I loved it. I was thrown for a loop. I didn't know what to expect next.
I have been a JBU listener for years and tried to find through the backlog an episode about this, but wasn't able to, so I thought I would write in. A little about my relationship. Me, 25 female, partner, 30 male. Length of relationship, 1.5 years. Length of knowing each other, 3 years. This relationship has been wonderful. I feel seen and heard. We both work to help each other become the best versions of ourselves while also allowing room for our flaws and mishaps that happen as humans. The thing I have had a hard time with is in almost every aspect of our relationship, he is slower / more reserved in his timeline. We have talked about my feeling this way, and he chalked it up to that I am generally more in my feelings and emotional while he is more logical and thought out, which I fully agree with. And this was said by him with love and not in a bitch you crazy emotional way. Man, our fucking readers are so funny. I mean, our listeners are readers. It's a great balance because he can help put logic into my daily emotions and I can help put emotion into daily logic. But it makes me feel like I care about our relationship and I'm way more invested when I want to progress things at a faster rate than him. And while I know feels are true, that doesn't mean they are reality. Pretty sure this was the title of a JBU episode, LOL.
What a great title.
It's going to be the title of this one. No, it's going to be Highway to Relationship, or no, Escalator to Relationship Hell. Anyway. It's hard not to have hurt feelings. He shows me in so many ways that he cares about me, our future, and our relationship. It's just the pace I have a hard time with. Examples of us having different timing. 1, I wanted to date him pretty soon after we met. Due to external circumstances, he had to move a plane ride distance away and didn't want to do long distance while I wasn't opposed to it. We stopped talking after a while due to me feeling too emotionally invested. He moved back and we eventually rekindled things and have been happily together for a year and a half. 2, I was ready to say I love you after a few months, but I wanted the traditional, quote, guy says it first. Timeout. Is that a thing?
I was waiting for a timeout here. I don't know.
I don't think that's a thing.
I have
Is
no
that
idea.
a thing?
I'm like in a...
Maybe it's a thing in like just like heteronormative patriarchy, like a man opens a door and pays and says he loves you first.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But in my experience...
I was like, I haven't been in a heterosexual relationship since I was in 9th grade, so I'm so removed to it that I don't know what the rules are. So
I haven't participated in that rule other than just the general man first, woman second sort of
absolutely.
vibe that
well, women
society
are crazy
off.
and emotional, and so we need the logical men to...
Bitch, you crazy emotional. Anyway, okay, moving on. It took him a year to say I love you. He said he felt like it at 6 months, but needed time before saying it to me. 3, my lease was up after a year and a little change of us dating, and I wanted to move in while he didn't really feel ready. He said next year when my lease was up and we've been together for 2.5 years, he thinks he'll be ready and wants to commit to that plan if our relationship continues in this trajectory. 4, we had been dating for 6 months when the holidays were coming up, and he didn't want to be a part of my family's events and didn't want me to be a part of his because it felt too soon for him. I was open to discussing a way to figure out a way to do both. Our families live close enough to where we could do 2 in one day kind of thing. We didn't do something due to his comfortability or lack thereof. We have since then discussed the plan this year to be at each other's holidays, events, and he wants that. 5, I am thinking about marriage a little bit. I definitely want to live with him for a while or so before deciding that for sure. But my mind has been wandering there recently. He has made it clear that he's not thinking about marriage and wants to be together for 4 to 5 years before having a conversation about marriage and proposal. I'm more wouldn't mind talking about it after 3 years if we have lived together for a while, etc. I guess my question is, how do I help myself remember that he cares about me, even though our relationship escalator looks different? I also want to add for context that 2 of my past 3 relationships have been very love bomb, move really fast, and then crash and burn out type of love. This good love with my partner is slow and methodical and thought out, which makes it feel off. And I hate to say it, but a little boring at times. I know the exciting rush of lust relationships are not sustainable, which has been proven in that all my past relationships ended before 6 months, while this one has lasted 3 times as long. But sometimes I wonder, is him being slower a lack of love for me? And should I move on to a different love? Gah, the more I write this, the more anxious I get about it. For reference, he is securely attached and I am disorganized attached, a mixture of anxious and avoidant. It's lovely. I have the best of the worst worlds. Enough of my rambling. Any insight and advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to read this, even if it doesn't make it onto the podcast. Love you all. In love, just faster.
All right. In love, just faster. I'm sorry that writing your letter made you more anxious. That is not usually what happens. For
all of them are like, I feel better after writing this out. And you're like, I feel worse.
And I'm sorry that this is causing you so much anxiety, and that the way that this relationship is moving, the way that your partner moves through this relationship is making you feel unloved. And, I think that it's not unreasonable to be looking at this and asking yourself some questions about, is this the right relationship for me? Is there enough here for us to continue to do this? I think that that's all really normal and understandable. And I also think that it's great that you're sort of taking a step back and looking at this and saying, there's nothing wrong with his timeline. There's nothing wrong with how he's moving through this relationship. And how do I not interpret it as being unloved? How do I do the self-soothing, the self-care that I need to do to be able to be in this relationship with this man who sounds like you really love and that is treating you well and is supportive of you and has, these difficult conversations with you. So Sierra and I are going to talk a little bit about all of those things and other things probably that come up as we talk. But before we do that, we're going to take a short break.
All right, my darling. Thank you for writing and trusting us with this letter. Sam asked a great question, summarizing your letter before the ad break. That was basically like, how do I receive his love in this way without feeling insecure about it or questioning? How do I remember that he cares about me, even though we would move differently through it? Mm-hmm. And I think the first thing I would start with is curiosity. Curiosity is just the most empowering of all the emotions. It's not an emotion. Actions? Sure.
Yeah. Mindset, values.
Mindset. There we go. Because upon reading this, I second what Sam said. This relationship sounds great and secure, and he seems like a really safe and wonderful person to grow a love with. And also, I think that would make me second guess things too, because here's where the curiosity comes in. I was taught in my early relationships and my earliest relationships, which are the ones with my parents and family members, that things didn't last and that things needed to be earned and proven, and that my worth in the world as a woman was as a object of a desire or an object of love. And I'm curious about why he moves the way he does, Why does he feel like he needs to wait 4 to 5 years to get married? That sounds like a fine timeline to me. That sounds like totally reasonable. But I'm curious where he gets that from. Is it just logical? Is it what he sees in his friends or his family members, or, like what were his past relationships like? What makes him feel so sure that that timeline will equate success and not another timeline?
For sure. Yeah.
All open-ended, because I don't think any of this is wrong.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I love the idea of you two, like, honestly having a conversation about some of these worldviews that you have, right? Where it's about the curiosity. Like, what about 4 or 5 years feels like the right timeline? Like, where is that coming from? Like, it might be logic. It might be all of those different things that Sierra said. And I also want you to do something like curiosity with yourself too, right? Where it's also about like, what about a more accelerated timeline feels like the right thing to do, feels like how things should be, feels like a more sustainable, more authentic relationship. Like, where is that coming from? And is it coming from what you've seen your friends do? Is it coming from what your parents have done, right? Like, what are some of the places where these two divergent timelines are so important to both of you? And
yes, totally.
And I want to do that, not because I want like one of you to prove that you're right to the other person.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right? Like, I don't.
That's it. That's so important.
It's not like a debate where suddenly we decide one is better than the other, but I want you to be thinking about it in a way of, we both have absolutely legitimate reasons for why we want these two different timelines. And then we as a couple get to make a decision about what we want to do, given the fact that those two timelines are deeply understandable, come from deeply reasonable places, whether that reasoning is emotional or not emotional, right? And want to like say out loud that like emotional reasoning is not a bad thing, right? Logic is not always prime, especially in relationships, and that you then get to decide sort of whether or not you move on one of those timelines or another. Because there is nothing wrong with either of your timelines, right? Like, you've talked about like the idea of, like love bombing and the insustainability of those types of relationships. And I think that that's absolutely true. And then there's, like, maybe the other side of this where it's like relationships that never quite get going and they're always like on the back burner and they're never right. And it sounds like you two are somewhere in the middle where lots of relationships that look really different kind of work. And so you all need to continue to have these curious conversations with each other so that you can better understand where each other is coming from. And so that when he's saying, I'm not going to think about moving in until next year, you can think, oh, yeah, because of all of these different reasons that he has said to me out loud, rather than creating some sort of narrative based on your own timeline that tells you something that he's not actually saying to you, right? Where instead of, you can say, oh, he wants 2.5 years because like he saw his friend move in with somebody too early and it really blew up their whole life or something like that, right? And instead of saying like, oh, he wants to wait another year because he doesn't love me enough, right? Let's get curious about what the actual motivations are rather than just assigning motivations to what we're seeing based on our own experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes for him as well. Like, I'm looking at your list of you two having different timings, and all of them seem really reasonable to me on both ends. Like, I'm a super fat, like, I say I love you in the grocery store on the first date.
You do.
Sort of thing. But I want to point out two things. He has to be curious too, in that, and you have to be confident in your desire to move forward. Like, we always want to play like the cool kid, like, I'm going to be the cool chick and like not want to get married. When it's like, you can say, I want you to say to him like, I'm interested in getting married one day. This is a part of my vision, if not for us, for my life. How do you feel about marriage? Yada, yada. Mm-hmm. And you have to feel confident enough to say things like, I'm excited to move in together because I'm excited to experience that with you. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'm really intrigued and excited. And I love the idea of, integrating our life together in that way. And he has to be curious enough to hear the validity of your quote unquote emotional reasoning, as Sam said, like it's not just you being like, oh my God, I want the escalator to move to the next thing. It's that you're genuinely excited at the idea of living together and spending time together and building, and problem solving all of the fucking things that come up when you live together. There's a real world reason why you want to live together, not just that it's the next step up the ladder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he has to be open and curious to that as well. The thing I wanted to point out about the list of things that you have, the different timings that you wanted to date faster than he wanted to, that you wanted to say I love you before he did, yada, yada. I do want to point out so that you can soothe your anxiety a little bit, like all of these things have moved forward. The needle has moved, right? He did say he loved you. You guys talked about moving in together and he said he wasn't ready, but he said, I'm going to think about it next year. He wasn't ready to spend Christmas or holidays together. And now you're planning on spending holidays together. That's like, I don't want to say progress because I don't want to think about relationship moving as like a linear escalator, right? But like there is movement happening towards this, on this needle that you're judging this relationship by. And from our perspective, it seems very organic. It feels like maybe your anxiety is telling you that this is a symptom of a sickness when it's probably more a product of two totally different worldviews and decision makings and childhoods being mashed together into like a partnership. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, your concerns about this relationship being kind of boring, right? Or kind of slow and methodical. I do want to create space for the idea of like the intoxication of love bombing, right? Is not helpful in lots of different relationships, right? Like sometimes when we're used to love bombing relationships going super fast, falling in love immediately, like we can be in relationship and think like, oh, this is kind of boring, right? Like we only see each other like 3 times a week or whatever. And we also like have to sometimes go to pick each other up from when dropping off our cars at the shop, right? Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like sometimes it is really boring for sure, especially if what we're expecting is all the time, like a crazy amount of feeling, right? Like it needs to be at level 9 all the time. And I also just want to say that, like, if this relationship is boring for you, you also don't have to stay in it, right? Like, I think it is okay for you to say, like, this is moving too slow. This is not what I want to be doing. I want to be feeling more with this person than I currently feel. Like, I think that is a reasonable way to look at a relationship and decide that it's not for us. So I know that that's like not super great advice, but I do want to like create the space for the idea that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like either it's boring or it's like an emotional roller coaster. And if you're feeling it's too much on the boring side, like you can listen to that. And you can either say like, this is going really slow and I'm not feeling connected to you. I'm not feeling like stimulated by some of this stuff. Can we go on more dates? Can we, do more things that are going to like reinforce our relationship where we can, go to a class together or something, right? Like where you want to sort of address that. And relationships over the long term are sometimes boring. They are sometimes like, great, I have to sit in my waiting room like, for you. While you get your wisdom teeth out or whatever.
Yes, totally. I was just sitting here thinking Willow and I are going to go on a date on Friday night, and it will be our second date in probably a year.
Having a
with
baby.
No baby.
We'll really do that to a relationship.
Let me tell you about boring. Just kidding.
I will even say that
the point I wanted to make.
Oh, like even
is that
me and Peter, we don't have a baby. We have also had some conversations recently about like, how can we spend more intentional time together, right? Like how can we?
Yep, exactly.
Right? Like, and that's an important cue to be listening to if you're feeling like things are not moving in the way that you would like to, or that you're feeling disconnected from your partner.
Yes, exactly. And let's reframe what boring is. Is boring the fact that you guys don't have like intense fights and then intense passionate makeup sex, or is boring that he tells you that he loves you and doesn't like buy you 500 balloons that go and pollute the whole world?
Sure, yeah.
I joked earlier 5 seconds ago that my relationship is boring, but it really didn't feel like it. Our year was very filled with living, but living sometimes isn't romantic. Living sometimes isn't the honeymoon stage or the grandiose love that we see depicted. But there is a deep intimacy and a romance of like supporting each other through life, like gaining a deeper understanding of that person just by seeing them witness the world.
For sure.
All right, my darling. I hope that this helps. I hope this gives you a little bit of new perspective to bring into your relationship, a relationship that sounds like a good one. If it's right,
it sounds good if it is
Sam's
good.
Right. Like, right. Yeah. Put that on a t-shirt. And I think, one more thing before we sign off. Like, I think we often we hear about the term relationship escalator, and then we start thinking about our relationship and wanting more or second guessing it. And then we think about the second guessing and we're like, oh my God, am I just putting us on an escalator? Am I feeling the pressure of the world? Am I overanalyzing a good thing? Am I underanalyzing? Am I accepting a love that is that's not nutritious enough? Quote, just break up, We do a lot of overthinking about how we're overthinking. So last note from me is just to take a deep breath and, it's okay to analyze your relationship. It's okay to take the temperature, to check in with yourself and say, am I getting what I want? What's making me feel insecure? What's making me feel secure? What's making me feel excited? What's making me feel bored? And just stay curious and stay compassionate for yourself, to all the things that come up there. But don't get lost in the weeds of diagnosing your relationship. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, my darling. I hope this helps.
Thank you so much for writing. We love you.
Okay, it's Friday, so we are going to leave you with the blind date. Every week, Sam and I like to shout out something that we love, that we want to set you up with. And this week's blind date is...
It's a show called Foundation. It's on Apple TV Plus. It is a science fiction show about like the future of humanity. There's like a big sort of like galactic empire that exists, and it's really dense. I will say it's not a show that you can watch while also looking at your phone. Like you really have to pay attention to it. But it is visually beautiful. The story is like really interesting. It isn't stuff that I've seen a lot of before. And it is, the plot of it is really complicated, but it is really fun to like figure it out. And there keeps being all of these like different twists and turns that have come up that I have not been expecting. It's really well written, well acted, and just like a beautiful, beautiful show to watch. I believe the second season is coming out or has come out recently. I'm still watching the first season, but I love it. And also Lee Pace is in it. And Lee Pace is, I think, honestly, the hottest man in the world. So you get to spend a lot of time looking at his beautiful, beautiful face.
Lee Pace, let's see. You think he is the hot man? He looks like a Wisconsinite.
That's probably, yes.
And, like a hot Wisconsinite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just like me.
He looks like he plays for the Packers. Yeah.
6'5", also famously gay, and just a beautiful, beautiful man. So check it out.
Oh my God, that makes him way hotter.
Absolutely, right?
Way hotter.
So check it out. It is called Foundation, and you can...
Oh my God, and he was in The Hobbit. Okay, sorry.
No, absolutely. He was also in Pushing Daisies, which was like one of my favorite shows of all time. And it's funny because like in Pushing Daisies, he plays this like sort of like demure, like kind of nerdy, like loving person. And he was like so hot in that show. And then in the show, he's like the evil emperor and he's like really hot in a very different way. And it's like, I love a man who's versatile. I love a man who's versatile.
Oh yeah, he definitely is. No, I like him. Okay. Can't wait to check it
absolutely.
out. I mean him out. I mean the show out.
All right. It's called Foundation, and it is available on Apple TV Plus, I believe. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in more content from us, you can always support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to all of our episodes without ads. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DM, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by our friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and music. And remember, Walt Whitman famously said, be curious, not judgmental. And it's a great reminder that we can be two things at once. We can be anxious and we can find security. We can be in love and we can question. We can be more than one thing at once. Life is about the nuance, the complexity, and if all else fails,
just break up.